I call the Honourable Member Darian Fenton. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, and I rise with disappointment to oppose this bill on behalf of the Labour Party, and my colleagues have spelled out that we have concerns around this bill regarding representation for Māori, Pacific ethnic groups, youth, disabilities and, of course, local communities. Now, when you work your way through the bill, Mr Speaker, I mean, part one, that talks about the purpose of the bill, you can't really disagree with any of it. It all makes quite a lot of sense, really. It talks about continuing the Arts Council of New Zealand, Aotearoa. It talks about recognising the cultural diversity of the people of New Zealand, the recognising in the arts the role of Māori as tangata whenua, and recognising the arts of Pacific Island peoples of New Zealand, and upholding the principles of participation in the arts and access by supporting the availability of projects of merit to communities, excellence in innovation, by supporting activities of artistic and cultural significance that develop the creative potential of artists and art forms, professionalism and advocacy. Now, you can't, no one can disagree with the purpose of the bill, and in fact, Labor certainly does not disagree with the overall purpose as described by the bill. In fact, there's much in the bill that, is hard to disagree with. The fundamental issue for Labor is tonight we are in a rationalisation process that is completely unnecessary, and that will see the end of an entity called Te Wakatoi that has provided support to Māori organisations through the Creative New Zealand and Pacific Island, the Pacific Island Representation Arts Board, and it will see, and what's worse, no one else can ever own, use or use that name Te Wakatoi to describe arts activity in New Zealand. Now, I think that all of us, whether we have artistic backgrounds in any of the performing arts or creative arts, or whether we don't, value and understand the importance of art in this country. It is the lifeblood, the soul of our country. It is about how we describe ourselves. It's about our unique identity. New Zealand arts and performing arts are different to any other country. There is no other country in the world that produces the kind of artistic talent that we have here, and they're about reflecting ourselves, our cultural diversity, and I don't believe that anyone here would disagree with the importance of the arts in this country. What does puzzle me, however, Mr Speaker, is why we are doing this bill. And as I've spelled out a little bit about our objections, our concern about representation, but also why this bill was introduced in 2010 in the last government, before the last election, 2010, and it is a rationalisation, very important, and also remind the House, Mr Speaker, that before Christmas, I think on the very eve of the House rising before Christmas, we were debating the committee stages of this bill 4 years, almost 4 years after it was introduced. So I don't understand why, if we've survived, if the Arts Council and Creative New Zealand have survived thus far without this rationalisation, without the removal of the right for Māori and Pacifica people and ethnic communities to be involved, why they've managed to survive as it is, why we have to do this 4 years later. And that's right, $200,000, nothing. Absolutely, and this government just throws money at all sorts of other things, yet wastes the House time on this pitiful little bill that has caused so much concern to artists and arts communities. And we have heard, I know the Select Committee did, and I wasn't on the Select Committee, but I know that parties that oppose this bill have heard from those communities, those who were involved in the consultation process, expressed their concern to us in no uncertain terms, but also told us that they were quite nervous and even afraid of expressing that view in front of the Select Committee in case they felt their organisation might be adversely affected. Now, isn't that a sad state of affairs? And don't we hear that so often when it comes to anything that's funded in the community by this government? I'm sure that my colleagues have heard exactly the same story from community organisations that rely on the beneficial hand, the handouts, I should say, of Paula Bennett. I wanted to call it Paula Bennett, benefit, but anyway, I didn't. I didn't. I resisted the urge. Oh!
The lights have gone out.
So
the power's gone.
The power's off?
The member may continue, mind you, but there's no...
I think I won't, Mr Speaker, because it's kind of creepy. It's kind of creepy. You can't see the bell.
Sorry? I think
that's
so.
Right. I was so...
Honourable members, I think, given the circumstances, I should suspend the House until such times as the lighting resumes.
And we are back.
You should have named a time.
Ask and it shall be given.
Exactly.
I call the Honourable Member Darian Fenton.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It's really quite a strange atmosphere. Is this emergency power we've got now?
Now there is.
Is it? Okay. Well, see, I was being so forceful and impressive. I put the lights out. Was it? It was the mention of the minister. That's what it was. Yes, it must have been the minister, you know. That's right, he's being a Scrooge and he must have been turning the lights down, I think. However, look, I heard the member for North Shore, Maggie Barry, sort of yelling across the chamber earlier in the debate about how Labor had their chance and did nothing. Well, I just want to let that member know she needs to go and visit some of the community arts organisations in the North Shore community, including the Depot Art Space, who have written to her and written to others to talk about their deep, deep concern about the parlous state of community arts groups throughout New Zealand, their concern of funding that is being cut by the Minister for arts courses in Unitec and in poor communities like Rawini, whose people depend on these type of courses. Thank you, Mr Speaker. And they have written about how important the involvement of community arts is. What we have here, Mr Speaker, is a government that doesn't really believe that arts has any value unless you can put a money value to it. That's what we hear from Minister Joyce all the time. That's why we're seeing cuts to creative courses at Unitec and others. I met a young woman tonight who's just finished a degree in the performing arts, in acting. And I was asking her, what will she be doing? And she knows that her life is going to be a struggle because the value placed on her education is completely ignored by this government. Anything to do with the arts, anything to do with music, unless it is the ballet or the opera, is ignored, is seen by this government as worthless. Oh, yes, of course, they had to say something about Lord, although I can't say that Christopher Finlayson had anything to do with her success, or for that matter, the member for North Shore, Maggie Barry, because Lord goes to school in her electorate. So that's the unfortunate thing about this bill, Mr Speaker. The government doesn't value the arts. They see them as a cost. They do not see the benefit to the communities. They are passing a silly bill that didn't need to be passed. What they needed to be doing was investing more in the arts. They needed to be making sure that there is a Māori and Pacific and ethnic voice in community arts. They need to be encouraging and supporting community groups up and down New Zealand who do wonderful things. We need to be celebrating the artists and the performing artists in this country. We need to be giving them the message that we value them, Labor values them, and that's why we cannot support this bill.
Honourable members, just to advise you, as I have been, that there was a power surge and as a result the lights went out, but I'm advised that the lights are all starting to come back on. So, who's next?
Speaker.
I call the Honourable Member Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On account of the fact I can't